We are continuing our discussion on the foundational text of Indian philosophy. So we are right now discussing Buddhism. This is a kind of introduction to the philosophical concepts of Buddhist tradition. Now, I think at the very beginning I mentioned a few things about the canonical tradition of the Hinayana system, the more orthodox but a heterodox system of Buddhism, who consider the Tripitakas as their foundational texts, in contrast to the other four schools of Buddhism that emerged from 2nd century BC onwards. That evolution of this later phase of Buddhist thought continued right up to the time of Dignaga, Vasubandhu, Chandrakirti, Dharmapala, and other, especially Anambana Pariksha is one of the well-known books of the later phase of Buddhist philosophy. So, the ethical, moral, philosophical concepts which were emphasized in the Tripitaka tradition, in contrast to very profound, idealistic and realistic thought systems of later Buddhism, which are known as Sautrantika and Vaibhashika, belonging to the realistic school, mostly linked to the Hinayana system, and then Shunyavada and Vijnanavada, which are two schools of idealism that belong to the Mahayana system. To discuss a few things about some of the identical, similar, or maybe contrasting thought currents found in Buddhism and also Advaita Vedanta. Maybe that's the first step towards understanding where Buddhism stands with regard to the ultimate goal of human existence. So I think I mentioned at the very beginning that both Vedanta, specifically Advaita Vedanta, and Buddhism emphasize that this body-mind complex is not our true nature. In Advaita Vedanta and Shankaracharya's commentaries, you find Dehendriya Vedirikta Atma, Atma or Brahman, which is distinct and different and apart from the body-mind complex. This is not our true identity. When we identify ourselves with this body-mind complex, then we feel what Buddhists call dukka, or what, for want of a better term in English, that is called avidya, ignorance. So, when we identify ourselves with something that we are not actually, then we feel this dukkha. As I mentioned earlier, there's a big problem in translating dukkha into the English word grief or sorrow. That is the most important misunderstanding in Buddhism. The second most damaging translation is translating sunyata into nothingness. Many traditional Buddhist teachers belonging to Japanese, Tibetan, Chinese, Burmese, Sri Lankan teachers belonging to the Hinayana tradition, especially Sri Lanka and Burma, the Japan and China, Tibet, more or less linked to the Mahayana system or Vajrayana system in Tibetan tradition. All of them are unanimous in putting forward this idea, the traditional teachers, that what we call emptiness in English, for want of a better translation, is not what we call nothingness in Oxford Dictionary. Absolutely wrong. When they talk about emptiness or shunya, what they're talking about is that these panchaskandhas, as they call Buddhists, Rupa, Vedana, Samjna, Samskara and Vijnana. That means this body, the matter, which is made of earth and all the Pancha Mahabhutas, then sensations and feelings, what we call Vedana, then a perception, or samjna as we call it in Sanskrit, sensory objects, samskaras, vrittis, vasanas, samskaras, sankalpas, which are you're familiar with yoga tradition, and also vijnana, which is consciousness, which is aware of all this, awareness. These do not constitute our true identity. And dukka is caused by this false identification of what we actually are with our form, sensations, feelings, samskaras, or even mental formations, or awareness or consciousness. The same is the view of Advaitins. Advaitins will tell you, when your mind and eye go together and see an object, the mind takes the form of that object. When your mind and ears go together and cognize something, an external object, our mind takes the form of that external object. Otherwise, no creative art will be possible. Suppose you are listening to a song yesterday, or maybe 10 years ago you memorized or you studied. Today you are able to play and maybe sing that song, or you have seen a picture and you try to paint a picture similar to that. What is happening is, your mind has already taken the form of the picture when you saw the picture in the art gallery, and then when you come back home and then you visualize, again the picture comes to your mind and the mind takes the form of the picture. That's why you're able to paint a picture similar like that. Or maybe your mind takes the form of the sound system, the music. That's why you're able to recollect and sing the same song. So also, when you remember touching a glass or a chair yesterday, again, mind is taking the form of that, and that's why you are feeling the sensation again. Advaitins and also Buddhists will tell you that this is not our true nature. Well, Advaitins will tell you that this is our Maya, of course. Maya is something that we experience, but certainly not real. So it's we understood that what we experience may not be absolute reality, may not be truly real. So this Dehendriya Vedirikta Atma, our true nature is Dehendriya Vediriktam, means it is distinct and different and apart, in total contrast to this body-mind complex. And that point is perfectly agreed upon by both Buddhists and also Advaitins. So the inquiry, the investigation into reality begins here. But there's a problem. In Buddhist tradition, we de-identify, what we call, we dehypnotize ourselves by getting rid of this identification with the Panchaskandhas. The technical word is Panchaskandhas, means these 5 elements, 5 aggregates, which is Panchaskandhas, 5 components that actually make up our personality, externally speaking, our mental existence. That means the Rupa, Vedana, Samjna, Samskara and Vijnana. Now, these things are part of a flux, a changing phenomenon. And therefore, all these are impermanent. So there is nothing that you may call permanent. And that idea is rooted in another very important concept called dependent origination. Dependent origination means praditya samutpada. Everything is coming from somewhere else. There is an origination, but that origination is not independent. There is nothing that is intrinsic or fundamentally independent or existing in itself in Buddhism. That idea is emphasized by the word sunyata or anatta or anatma if you use the Sanskrit language. We'll go further. We'll discuss this later. Now, Vedantins will tell you, well, we have to get out of this false identification. And we get this liberation from this false identification when we get moksha. And when we get moksha, it is not just cessation of sufferings, as in Buddhism. In Buddhism, the Buddhist equivalent of moksha is nirvana. Nirvana is cessation of all sufferings. A lamp gets self-extinguished. What is left? There is no answer. In Advaita Vedanta, the cessation of sufferings, this false identification comes to an end. But there is also a perfect realization of our Swarupa, of our true nature. So Vedanta goes beyond negation. In reality, Nagarjuna was certainly not a negativist, but if you get a superficial interpretation of Shunyavada, as Nagarjuna expounds in Madhyamika Karika, Mula Madhyama Shastram it is called. It's a Sanskrit book. It is the Bible of Shunyavada. So I will discuss that by comparing a comparative study and discussion of verses from Nagarjuna's Madhyamika Karika, which belongs to 2nd, 3rd century AD, and Gaudapada, the great Advaitin, Purishan great Advaitin, is Mandukya Karika, which belongs to 6th century AD. So there's a gap of 300 years between these two. You find Gaudapada coming 300 years after Nagarjuna, literally uses the same terminology, including the Rajasarpa Bhranti, this snake, rope snake analogy. Even Mandhyaputra, or the Sesavishana, it means the horns of a hare, the son of a barren woman, or a city in the sky, Akasha Nagari means. So, Gandharva Nagara, all these terms are used by Nagarjuna also, 300 years before Gaudapada. So, the only difference is that Advaitins will tell you that when you get moksha, it's not only an experience of all problems coming to an end, but simultaneously some positive experience also coming. Again, it is not something that you get, you discover within yourself. It's already there. Your false identification created a vikshepa, ravarana, means a projection caused by a covering. When something is covered, you don't know what it is, so you may have a wrong notion as to what that object is. So that false notion is gone, and then you realize what it is. That is not clearly mentioned by Buddha, and historically speaking, Buddha was silent when some of his disciples put this question forward. We'll discuss that later. So, according to Buddhists, these panchaskandhas, the physical body, the sensations, feelings, and the samjna, the perception of sensory objects, and then the samskaras, and also vijnana. These 5 skandhas, 5 elements, aggregates, they constitute our personality. We identify with whatever we experience, whatever thought comes to our mind, whatever we experience at the physical level or mental level or intellectual level, we identify with that. So dukka is the result. This is the foundation of Buddhist concept of dukka. Now again, coming to subject. Maybe a few more points needs to be discussed on this subject. One is Rupa. Rupa is a physical form. Then, there is Vedana. Then there is a feeling. Feeling, I mean, everything is perceived either happy or unhappy, pleasant or unpleasant. In Vedanta, pleasant or unpleasant, sukha, dukkha. But in Buddhism, there is also a neutral element. So, all these experiences remain with us, and we identify ourselves as the one who experiences something happy or something unhappy. Then perception. Perception is recognition process. A sensory information is received and processed. It's going on all the time in our mind. Then mental formation, samskaras. And Buddhists also agree with the idea found in Yoga Sutra that these samskaras are carried on from life to life. Whatever we do, it creates a vritti, a residual element left in our mental system. And that becomes a samskara, a solidified vrittis. And these samskaras again becomes more rooted in the mental system, becomes a sankalpa. And that sankalpa will take your mind backward. Oh, I had that previous good experience, so you have a tendency to do it again. Or I had a bad experience, so you will have a tendency of avoiding that again. So these samskaras also constitute the personality of human mind. So we identify with all the samskaras. So in other words, suppose somebody living in modern times, in modern age, in this 21st century of information technology, the artificial intelligence, or you may call it, if that person suddenly displays some unique characteristics, which have only read about it among the great saints and mystics who lived 2000 years ago, 3000 years ago. From a Buddhist perspective, yoga perspective, Vedantic perspective, there is no room for any doubt, because these samskaras are coming to the surface and we identify. It happened to Buddha also. All the 543 rebirth stories mentioned in Jataka tales, Buddha was going backward in time into his own previous life cycles. All those sensations and perceptions and feelings and emotions, they all came to his mental system. He did not identify with them. He became aware of them, then he got himself detached from them, and he moved forward. Finally, he got this answer for the fundamental question, what is the cause of dukkha? And that's how Buddha became the great enlightened one. Then consciousness, that is vijnana. Now, all these 5 skandhas, all the time, they are creating a kind of attachment. They are creating desire, clinging, and also desire to experience again. And this, of course, is part of the praditya samutpada system that will take up as an independent discussion, maybe when we resume this class again after some time. We will discuss that later. So, in other words, there are many areas which are common to Advaitins, to Patanjali, the author of Yoga Sutras, and also Buddhists. Especially the idea of bondage. I mean, identification with the Pancha Skandhas and 5 aggregates, or identification with the body-mind complex in Advaita. It's so very common. Again, the idea that we should get out of this, somehow we reach somewhere which is a better place, vaguely speaking. That also is common to both the systems. Only in Buddhism, nirvana is mentioned. But if you read Buddha's life, it's clear that he experienced himself to be something other than this body-mind complex. So he was not living in an awareness of his nothingness, remember, that's very important. How can a great man like Buddha say, oh, he was all the time, he was identifying himself with nothingness? So this is absolutely wrong. The nothingness is a very, very wrong, even dangerous, I would call it, and very, very misleading translation of the word sunyata. I will discuss this when I take up verses from Madhyamika Karya towards the end of the session. So sunyata is not nihilism, it is not annihilationism, means destroying everything. Again, sunyata and praditya samutpada, they are interconnected, and they can always be called as two sides of the same experience. Everything is dependent upon something, coming from something else, and therefore by itself it is not intrinsically real or permanent. It is changing all the time. It's always changing. So in that sense, it is by its very nature impermanent. Therefore, there is nothing that is permanent in this world. So that is the philosophical background of this concept of sunyata. And of course, we will discuss the later. Right now, I want to take up this subject of comparing or discussing some of the verses in the Praditya Samutpada, and also in the concept of Praditya Samutpada in Nagarjuna, where he mentions that, where Nagarjuna talks about two levels of reality. One is Samvriddha Satya, that is Paramartha Satya. Samvriddhi Satya, what we call empirical experiences, which include Praditya Samutpada, which include Panchaskandhas, which includes all our emotional experiences, intellectual convictions, everything is included there. All those things are Samvriddhi, means empirical, relative reality. And Shunya is the ultimate Paramarthika reality. The same is true in Vedanta also. We will come to that. So, for example, in one of the well-known verses you find in the Gaudapada Karika, Soto va parato vapi na kinjit vastu jayate sadasat vapi na kinjit vastu jayate. What it says is, nothing is coming to existence. So it's a non-origination. It's called Ajadavada or Ajadivada. It's a foundational book of that doctrine is Mandukya Karika or Gaudapada Karika. Gaudapada is the author. So nothing is ever coming to existence, either from itself or from something else. Again, sadasat vapi na kinjit vastu jayate. Similarly, there is nothing in this world which is real or which is unreal or which is a combination of both real and unreal. Now, what is he talking about? He says there is nothing in this world which comes into existence either from real or unreal or a combination of both, which is actually permanent. Coming to existence is there, dependent origination, the Praditya Samutpada, the 12 link, things are coming, but they are disappearing. They are coming, they are going, and they are always changing. And in that case, there is nothing really true. So you find Nagarjuna, actually indirectly he accepts the Advaitin's doctrine of what is Paramarthika Satta. So even while describing Shunya in Madhyamika Karika, Nagarjuna uses many terms which were later used by Shankaracharya and even Gaudapada, in Gaudapada Karya and Shankaracharya in his commentaries on Mandukya Upanishad. For example, that which is non-definable, beyond mind and words, avang manasagocharam, or Panchashabda Pravritti Nishedhaga, something which cannot be defined in terms of connection, quality, genetic identity, action or properties. The jati, guna, karma, dravya, these are different ways of explaining something. So he called 5 types of verbalization. If you want to identify something, then you have to call it is like that because of some qualities, guna. Or it is like sun, it is Sota-Pratyaksha. Or if you are describing a person, you may say he's a musician because he sings songs. So his action is implied. He's a red flower, red color is implied, quality or property. It's like that, guna, karma, dravya, jadi, etc. All these are different ways of verbalizing, defining or describing things. This shunya cannot be described. Even to call shunya as shunya itself is wrong, because then shunya becomes defined. When it becomes defined, it is no more absolute reality. All that belongs to samvriddhi satya can be defined, like vyavaharika entities can be defined by in Advaita. Vyavaharika and samvriddhi, both are the same. So there are many common things that you find in the Mandukya. Nagarjuna says, na sudo, na api parado, na dvabhyam, na pyaketukaka. Utpanna jadu vidyande bhava kojana kechana. So sat, na sat, sadasat, dharmo, nirvarteda. Yada, kadam nirvartago hedurevam sadi hi yujyade. Neither out of themselves, nor from themselves, neither from both, nor without a cause at all. None of these things are ever born. It means nothing is ever born either from themselves or from another source, or in whatever way you can think of. There is nothing that really comes to be born. What is the nothing? Nothing that is permanent is ever born. Means there is no such thing as permanent. In that sense, the word anatta is used. So there again you can find Nagarjuna implies that the absolute reality, shunya, is beyond definition. Why? Because definition is possible only for things which belong to the empirical level. When you define something, you have to explain. It comes from something, or it does something, or it should be compared with something that we already know. I mentioned earlier, Pancha Sabda Pravritti Nishedhaga. That is in Advaita. Brahman cannot be verbalized. What are Pancha Sabda Pravritti? The words function at 5 different levels. One is, let's say, guna. You can define a flower, red flower, white flower, things like that. Or you can describe a person, he is a painter because that's the work he does. So karma. Again, relationship. He is my brother, he is my friend, whatever it is. So kind of relationship, bandha, sambandha. So guna, shabda, karma, sambandha, dravya, something that you already know. That object is something like sun or moon, like that. Or jati, genetic, belongs to human species or non-human species, things like that, or mammals, whatever it is. You can describe something in terms of some genetic entity, genetic category that it belongs to, that person or animal or maybe a tree may belong to a particular category. So you can describe or define. Shunya cannot be defined. Now, these terms were later articulated in the elaborate bhashyas by Shankaracharya. But Nagarjuna, in a more subtle language, he already anticipates many of these expressions. Again, there is a verse in Mandukya Karika. na nirodho, na cha utpatti, na baddho, na cha sadhaka, na mumukshu, na vai mukta, ittesha paramarthada. So, we are already that reality. Of course, here is a slight difference. In Buddhism, first of all, you have to recognize the fact of dukka. Remember that dukka is also something impermanent. Because everything is impermanent, so dukka is also impermanent. And once you recognize the dukkha, then you should know there is a cause for the dukkha, there is a way out, and the way out is nirvana. Then you practice all these eightfold disciplines, samyak sankalpa, samyak ajiva, samyak vyayama, samyak smriti, samyak drishti. That's how it begins. And then finally when you realize shunyata, then you realize there is absolutely nothing. Na nirodha. That's what Nagarjuna says. You see, na nirodho na cha utpatti. That is Gaudapada. Na nirodho na cha utpattihi. Na cha utpatti, na nirodha. Both are identical. The same words are used by Gaudapada. In Mandukya Karika, the same words are used by Nagarjuna in Madhyamika Karika, which is again the Bible of Shunyavada. Shunyavada is, by unanimous opinions of the great Buddhist dialecticians, is the most advanced and philosophically the most transcendental doctrine that you can think of in Buddhist tradition. As a metaphysical concept, it is the most exalted, most widely recognized, closely followed by Vijnanavada. But Vijnanavada has got one problem. It has got two levels of evolution. One is Alaya Vijnanavada and Pravritti Vijnanavada. The first phase of Vijnanavada and the second phase, two levels of evolution. We'll discuss that later. So in Mandukya Karika, Gaudapada says, na nirodha na utpatti. There is no beginning, no origination. And then if nothing originates, nothing can be destroyed. Na nirodha na cha utpatti, na baddha. Of course, Gaudapada tells you there is no bondage. Of course, you know, Nagarjuna also says, na nirodho na cha utpatti, na baddha. No baddha, there is no bondage. Then what about dukkha? Chattvari arya satyani, samyak drishti, samyak ajiva, all the eightfold disciplines. All these also belong to the praditya samutpada level, the samvriti level, the empirical level, the level of relativity, not the absolutes. So when you reach the absolute level, from that perspective, when you look back, there is really no liberation, no nirvana. Because you have reached nirvana. When you are enlightened, then you don't use the word enlightened. The word itself gets self-destroyed. That's the idea behind. Because you recognize that's your true nature. That's called the Buddhahood, that tattatha, that you experience, you realize Buddhahood. At that stage, when you realize the sunyata, that highest experience, Nagarjuna says, na nirodhaka, na cha utpattihi, na baddhaka, na cha sadhaka. Almost copying, maybe Gaudapada copied from Nagarjuna 300 years later. Na mumukshu, na vaimuktaka, ittesha paramarthata. Again, Gaudapada says, na mumukshu, na vaimuktaka, ittesha paramarthata. So where do you draw the line? The line is to be drawn between the empirical, philosophical level and the transcendental or spiritual level. When a person realizes shunyata, he is in no way different from a person who realizes jiva brahmaikya, means the identity of jiva brahma, the unity of one. Names are different, categories are different. So, there are a few more examples which I would like to mention here. न भवति अमृतं मर्त्यं न मर्त्यम अमृतं तथा प्रकृतेर अन्यथा भावो न कथंचित भविष्यति. So those who are interested, of course, I'm sorry, I didn't quote it from Alata Shanti Prakaranam, means the 4th chapter of Mandukya Karika. Those who are interested, you can, I know. And the previous one that I quoted from, that is Na Nirodho Na Chotpatti, it is from Vaidatya Prakaranam. That is the 2nd chapter of Mandukya Karika. So it is called Agama, Vaidatya, Advaita and Alata Shanti, 4 chapters. Madhyamika Karika is organized, structured differently. So again, Na bhavati amrutam martyam. That's a common principle. That absolute reality, you may call Brahman in Advaita, it never becomes this world, because it is itself. It doesn't belong to Panchaskandha from a Buddhist perspective. The absolute reality, the spiritual experience, Brahman, is Dehendriya Vidrikta. So also, the experience of Shunya is a state where you realize yourself one with that which is beyond, which is distinct from the Panchaskandhas. So, na bhavati amrutam martyam, na martyam amrutam tatha. Those that belong to the Sambodhi level, the empirical level, relativity level, can never ever become eternal. Prakritehi anyatha bhavo na kathanjit bhavishyati. So, the intrinsic nature of anything in this world cannot change. It will remain unchangeable. Nagarjuna, yadi astitvam prakrtya syat na bhavet asya nastida prakrite anyatha bhavo nahi kaschit jatupapadyate. Slight difference in language, Nagarjuna. Yadi astitvam prakrtya syat na bhavet asya nastida. If something is existing by its very nature, then it can never become non-existent. So everything in this world belongs to the praditya samutpada. And it is fundamentally changing all the time. It is not independent. It is always dependent upon something else. So it is not intrinsically real. So, yadi astitvam prakrtya, it's not prakrtya by its own nature. Intrinsically, it doesn't exist. It exists only as something which depends upon something else for its existence of origination. It's called, that's why it is called dependent origination. Praditya samutpada. Na bhavet asya nastida. Prakrite anyatha bhavu nahi kaschit jatupapadyate. Nagarjuna says, anything in this world has to remain what it is. Its intrinsic nature cannot change. Of course, there are a few more things are here. Then Ajadam jayade yasmat ajadi prakristataha. Prakritir anyatha bhavo na kathanjit bhavishyati. The same idea. So practically you find Gaudapada takes the same idea from Nagarjuna. So somebody may ask this question. In that case, Advaita borrowed all these great ideas from Buddhism, from Sunyavada. You have to remember, Mandukya Karika is a commentary in verses. Karika means a commentary in sloka form, verse form. It's a commentary on the Upanishads, Mandukya Upanishad, which has got only 12 verses, and this text has got 215 verses, Mandukya Karika. So, the entire text of Mandukya Karika, Gaudapada Karika, is built upon the 12 mantras of Mandukya Upanishad, which Buddha also must have studied because he was born as a prince in his royal family. So all the Hindu princes had to study Vedanta. This is not to imply that Buddhism took everything from Hinduism and Vedanta. This is not at all the purpose of putting this in comparative form, because there are many wonderful things in Buddhism which are so exalted. Buddha emphasized, Buddhist teachers also emphasized certain great things which were not so clearly focused or emphasized in Hindu scriptures. There is no doubt about it. For example, as I mentioned, the egalitarian nature, the revolt against inequality in society, all these are great contributions of Buddhism and also Buddha. But I mean, when you go to the philosophical level, you find that what Vivekananda said, that Buddha was only giving a more humanistic, modern interpretation of Vedanta in exalted language. That's what it is. So just I was trying to give some important comparison. Again there is another one, Anirodham, Anutpadam, Anuchedam, Ashashwadam. There is a very well-known, maybe one of the most emphasized, oft-quoted verse from Mandukya Karika is this Nanirodho Nachotpatti. There is a even more forceful verse in Gaudapada Karika, which is saying Anirodham, Anutpadam, Anuchedam, Ashashwadam, Anegartham, Ananartham, Anagamam, Anirgamam. Ya Praditi Samutpadam, Prapanchopashamam Shivam, Desyamasa Sambundastam Vande Padadam Varam. Is the best of the teachers, Padadam Varam. Those who give words called Vadadam among the great teachers and preachers is the most exalted one. Nagarjuna is referring to Buddha. This is from Nagarjuna's Madhyamika Karika. He says that means there is no annihilation, there is no origination, and there is no total destruction, and there is no permanence, there is no identity, no difference, not coming in, not going out. Those of you who have read Mandukya Upanishad, you can find neither this nor that, neither inside nor outside, you can find. So, the fundamental indescribability, non-definability, transcendental nature of the absolute reality is emphatically demonstrated by using language which may appear to be mutually contradictory. We have another great name from Christian tradition who in a way followed in his own way the same tradition. You find Meister Eckhart, who said that even to define God as Holy Trinity, in terms of Holy Trinity itself, falls short of the true nature of God. So any attempt to define, to create a word picture of the infinite is a sacrilege according to him. Vedanta tells you it is a futile effort. That's why Anirodham, Anutpadam. There is no destruction, no annihilation, no origination, no destruction, no permanence, no identity, no difference, not coming in, not going out. The enlightened one who taught the dependent origination, that enlightened one is Buddha. Ye praditi samutpadam. Prapanchopashamam. So Prapancha Upashama, that word is used in Mandukya Karika, 7th mantra. Sorry, Mandukya Upanishad. Prapanchopashamam Shantam Shivam Advaitam Chadutham Mandi Sa Atma Sa Viknyeka. 7th mantra of Mandukya Upanishad, Prapancha Upashamam. So when you reach this nirvana, which according to Nagarjuna is the realization of sunyata, when you reach, what happens is the prapanchasya upashama, means the world gets self-dissolved. You are not dissolving it. It is no more world. It doesn't go anywhere, but is no more perceivable as world. I mean, all that you see earlier as nama rupa, the world of names and forms, which is thought to be something real in itself, the same world is seen to be a Brahman. The world doesn't go anywhere. Just as in the rope snake analogy, when there is a piece of rope lying on the floor, you mistake it either for a snake, for a piece of stick, for a thin stream of water, Jaladhara, then there was a crack on the floor, Bhuchidra, Sarpa, Danda, Jaladhara. These are how you are likely to mistake a rope for a snake. When you bring light, the so-called snake idea goes away, but the snake doesn't go away. What you saw earlier as snake is now seen to be rope. That's all. So, Prapancha Upashama means the world, the Samvriddhi reality, which again is perceived by the Panchaskandhas. Vedana, Rupa, all these physical forms, sensations, samskaras, Vijnana, Vedana, all these, because with all the Panchaskandhas you create this world, then you identify yourself with this world. All these disappear, and that is Prapanchopashamam. That is that this Prapancha, it gets self-dissolved. Shivam. Incidentally, the word Shiva is also used by Nagarjuna. Practically, the Mandukya Upanishad, he must have read Mandukya Upanishad almost memorized. So you find Prapanchopashamam Shantam Shivam Advaitam Chadutham Manninde Sa Atma Sa Viknyeka. This is how the 7th mantra of Mandukya Upanishad ends. And that again, it must have already become popular, and Buddha himself must have studied very closely in those days. And Nagarjuna takes all this and he says, Prapanchopashamam Shivam Desyamasa Sambuddhistam Vande Vadudamvaram. That great teacher, the Vadudamvaram, the great exalted teacher, he taught this. That's how Nagarjuna comes. So what I mean to tell you is, when you go to the original, called the foundational text, then there is no room for any kind of discussions or conflicts or anything. At a spiritual level, which again at a spiritual level transcends all language, all definitions, all verbal expressions. If you go deeper into this, you can find the experience of Shunya is the same as the experience of this Advaitic Brahman, the realization. Because Nagarjuna himself says, Praditya Samutpadam, that is Prapanchopashamam. When you understand that everything in this world is the Praditya Samutpada, dependent origination, it comes within the structure, the framework of dependent origination, and everything is changing all the time, moving all the time, going, coming. So you can find the 3 levels of human existence. Bhuda, Vartamana, Bhavi means past life, present life, and future life are all implied in Praditya Samutpada, the 12-link chain that we discuss independently later, because this is a very elaborate topic. Sanabadhyandena muchindi udayadi adharminaha samskara purvavat sattu badhyade tena uchyate. So all the samskaras of the nature is coming and going, which are samskaras again part of panchaskandhas. They are rising up and then also disappearing. Then either, so all these come and go. So they are all impermanent. All these are coming and going, so they are not permanent. It is this aspect of the fundamental impermanence of everything at the empirical level that Buddha meant by the term anatta, because there is no permanent, no such a permanent entity as Atman. Remember, you have to remember the historical background. When Buddha was living in this world, there was this concept of Atman. Atman is absolutely real, permanent. Again, Vedanta philosophy had not undergone the kind of consolidation, or it had not, it was not completely structured, because Shankaracharya came only 1200 years after Buddha's time, 8th century. Buddha 6th century BC, Shankaracharya 8th century AD. Advaita was there in the Upanishads, in the Vedas and other books also. Adhyatma Ramayana has a lot of Advaita in it. Yoga Vasishtha has Advaita in it. But the point is, Advaita metaphysical system had not been, had not taken shape as a compact system of philosophy when Buddha was living. So maybe that's also one of the reasons why this absence of anything permanent as Atma is emphasized in Buddhism, is anatta. But implication is there is nothing in this empirical world which is permanent. It is not a refutation or rejection of Atman as understood in Advaita Vedanta and expounded in Shankara's Bhashyas. It is the rejection of anything permanent, eternal, unchanging at the empirical level. And that you can find when you read Madhyamika Karika, when Nagarjuna talks about the empirical reality as Samvriddhi Satya and Sunyata as Paramarthika Satta, mean the ultimate reality. Anyway, we will discuss this later. Maybe there is enough scope for elaborate discussion on this subject and question answer. But I have to read some announcements. This is very important. So this class comes to an end today, and we will begin our next class only next year, 2025. So there will be no foundational text classes on December 29 due to winter recess. The next Indian philosophy class will resume on March the 9th, 2025, because I will be traveling abroad. And before that, I want to make a few more very important announcements. First of all, we have a winter retreat. Our center is running a winter retreat. The retreat will take place in Vivekananda Hall at the New Temple, 2323 Vedanta Street, San Francisco. The retreat will be held on Saturday, January 4th, 2025, and Sunday, January 5th. There will be altogether 3 sessions, 2 sessions on Saturday and 1 session on Sunday. So on Saturday, the program will begin at 10 o'clock. There will be 1 hour class in the morning, followed by half an hour Q&A, question answer session. And after that, lunch. And then there will be another session in the afternoon, 3 to 4:30. After lunch will be provided to those who are attending the retreat. So 2 sessions on Saturday and 1 session on Sunday, 4th and 5th of January 2025. And then winter retreat, that's one important. Then winter recess, we have this from December 26th to January 11th, there will be winter retreat, winter recess. Then we have Christmas program on Wednesday, December 25, 11 a.m. There will be a talk on the message of Christmas. So please remember, that's also an important celebration here. Christmas lecture, Wednesday, December 25, 11 a.m., the message of Christmas. And then we have Holy Mother Sri Sharada Devi's birthday and also Kalpadaru celebration on January 1st. The program will begin at 10 a.m. It will be at the new temple, 2323 Valley Street, San Francisco. You can find car parking place nearby. So the program consists of morning puja, then music, devotional music, lunch prasad, and also reading from scriptures. And also we have Swami Vivekananda's birthday on January 25th, and Swami Brahmananda's birthday puja on January 31st. Please remember, these are important events. So Christmas celebration 25th December, and then Holy Mother's Puja, which is one of the major celebrations here. New temple on January 1st, and then we have winter retreat. It will be held in the new temple, 2323 Valley Street, San Francisco. And the subject for winter retreat is spiritual values for the IT age. So how many of these ideas, including Buddhism, different teachings, spiritual teachings from different scriptures do have a relevance and practical value in modern times. That will be the topic, the theme for discussion during the winter retreat. So you are most welcome. But please remember, there will be no class on Indian philosophy on December 29, next Sunday. And the next class will resume only on March 9th, 2025, at 6 p.m. And also you have to remember, I will be away, traveling abroad, so there will be no class. Thank you. You are most welcome to ask questions. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Yeah.
I want to ask you about the Friday class.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have that in front of you, but obviously that will be on hiatus also.
Yeah.
Suspended during this time. Do you know if it resumes on the 7th of March, on the Friday?
Thank you for mentioning that. There will be no Friday class on Viveka Chudamani till I think 5th of March. Let me see. I'm sorry, not 5th of March. I think 5th of March.
It would be the 7th of March.
7th, Friday will be 7th of March, please. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I announced this in the last Friday class, that's right. But thank you for reminding. It's very, very helpful, Thank you.
Well, some of us attend both.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. The first hand up is Sri Ram's.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned in the past that this guy Brahman Satchidananda is already engaging in Advaita act because it is beyond terminology. Also, you mentioned that dukka is, to be translated as sorrow, is a mistranslation. But literally the word dukka is diminished and sukha is expansive. Can you shed some light on that, Swamiji?
Yeah, technically, in Buddhism, they emphasize the reality of a human problem, the urge for spiritual growth. Buddha's experience itself is a good demonstration. Buddha had this vision of dead body and then old man, old age and sickness. So there's a problem in human life. So that actually triggered his inquiry. And then he found a solution to this human problem. So he discovered that it's all because we identify ourselves with the Panchaskandhas. So the physical body, the sensations, emotional system, convictions, all these, samskara, everything's there. In Vedanta, the same idea is very clearly stated from a different perspective. It's because our lack of knowledge of our real Swarupa, our true nature, that is the cause of all misery, all dukkha. The word dukkha is also used in Vedanta, but not as an important category as in Buddhism. In Buddhism, Sattvari Arya Satyani. for the four noble truths. The noble truth is dukkha. So remember, the only point I want to emphasize is the word dukkha doesn't really imply what we normally mean by the English word sorrow or grief or anything. See, Buddha was not crying and weeping when he left his palace and walked to Bodh Gaya or places where he did meditation. He was searching for something higher. Search for higher. That can be called Parinama Dukkha in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. In the Sadhanapada in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, you find Parinama Tapa Samskara Dukkhaiki Gunavisheshachas Dukkhameva Sarvam Vivekinaka. Remember, many of the great scholars and commentators of Patanjali Yoga Sutra were Buddhist. Vijnana Bhikshu was a Buddhist. So it's very important to remember. So, the dukkha in Parinama Dukkha means a transformative conviction of a problem with worldly life, which comes to you only when you are spiritually evolved. Vyasa's commentary tells you, it is only for an exalted person, a spiritually evolved person, who can feel that this world of five senses and sense enjoyments are not the best thing that we should have. We should go beyond that. That thought comes only to an exalted person. So Vyasa's commentary tells you. That's a good example of Buddha's own feeling when he left his palace. So it is not dukkha. Suppose you lose all your, your stock markets collapse and you lose all the money in the bank. Buddha did not feel that kind of dukkha, Which a greedy man may lose all the money and he may cry and weeping and hitting his head against the stone. That's not, there is no misery or wretchedness about it. Rather, it's a transformative feeling. An urge for looking something transcendental. That's the real meaning of dukkha. That's why it's called noble truth. You don't say your grief is a noble truth. Suppose something happens to you, you get grief stricken. It is not a noble truth. There is nothing noble about it. So it's a transformative feeling of the impermanence or incompleteness of what you experience. That's again, according to Buddhists, that emerges when you identify yourself with the Panchaskandhas. You de-identify yourself, you detach yourself from the Panchaskandha, the five aggregates, gone. Everything is gone. Because then you realize Pratitya Samutpada. They are all coming from some other source. That's why Nagarjuna says they are not intrinsically coming from anywhere. There is nothing intrinsically real in this world that is born, that gets destroyed. Nanirodham, nanutpadam, all that he says in the Nagarjuna, he uses the word, same word. So, but then there are things coming and going that belongs to the Praditya Samutpada framework, the empirical, the relative, the changing, phenomenal world. Remember. And when you identify yourself with this phenomenal world, that is called dukkha. Again, I think you can perhaps suggest to the great linguists and philologists to find a better translation for the word dukkha. That may be a great work you can do. It is absolutely misleading. Sunya is nothingness, dukkha is misery or grief. I think Buddha won't feel any sense of gratitude if you translate his feeling as he was walking from Lumbini to Bodh Gaya. He was crying and weeping, grief-stricken. Not at all. He was searching for something higher. Okay, thank you.
Is the Panchaskandha similar to Panchakosha?
Yeah, actually, in a way, Panchaskandhas can be linked to Panchakosha. That is true in a way. You stumbled upon a great truth, When you identify yourself with Panchakosha, that is what Buddhists call dukkha. Vedantists call avidya, ignorance. And Buddhists call bandha. That's the idea. When you realize that this identification is dukkha, you realize there is a cause for it. The way out. The way out is to practice all the eightfold disciplines. And then you get nirvana. When you get nirvana, all this dukka, all this identification ceases to exist. What happens next? It's not clearly stated, but Nagarjuna states that, or at least he implies that, when he says Shunya is something. In fact, the word Advaita is used to describe Shunya, but he also says Shunya cannot be described. Remember. So when you use so many different adjectives, some of them mutually contradictory, you are implying that is beyond verbalization, beyond definition and description. Nagarjuna was perhaps the greatest name in the Mahayana tradition, and next to the great name was Dignaga, was also the exponent of Madhyama Nyaya, one of the exponents of one of the great names in India's Nyaya tradition or logical tradition. Yeah.
Thank you, Sriram. Thank you, Maharaj. David, you're next.
Hello, Swami.
Yeah.
My question is, I actually have two questions. One is it? It seems like it's not really possible to understand Buddhism without understanding Advaita. Is that true?
That's true in a way. That is true, and maybe understanding Buddhism also will help you Advaita, mutually complementary. But remember, Advaita is much earlier. Not Advaitic metaphysical system that's now popular because of Shankaracharya, but Advaitic idea, which is much more ancient than Buddhism itself. As I mentioned, Nagarjuna literally, he reproduces words from Mandukya Upanishad 7th mantra. Prapanjopashamam Shantam Shivam. He doesn't say Chadutham Manyante Sa Atma Sabhikneha, but he says Prapanjopashamam Shantam Shivam. Up to that he comes in practically literally repeating the 7th mantra of Mandukya Upanishad. So you are right, actually. Yeah.
I have another question, which is, when you were describing what Buddha meant by dukkha, but didn't Buddha come to his renunciation because he saw worldly grief, like he saw sick people, he saw old age? So wasn't it because of regular human grief that he decided to renounce?
Yeah, it was not grief, his realization of the limitation of human life, something, that incompleteness, the imperfection of human life. So it's not, he was not crying and weeping. You have to remember, normally, when we use the word grief in normal language, they use that language. For example, when you, in social media, newspapers, you read about some huge natural catastrophe happening in some distant countries, you don't cry and weep. Rather, you may try to help by sending a donation or something. But it's not the same feeling that you suppose you lose money in the bank or something happens. Then you feel you're so hurt emotionally. But you don't feel emotionally hurt. You feel very much distressed. You'll be very unhappy. But it doesn't have it doesn't create the same feeling when you read in newspapers. These things happen in this world, very unfortunate. That's true. But you don't cry and you go and cry and weep. Then unless a psychiatrist may investigate, he's crying and weeping because there was a tsunami in Indonesia. So you're sitting in your room crying and weeping. You don't do that, Remember. Please don't mind comparison, just a little bit of humor, light way I'm telling, So Buddha had this urge for looking a fundamental answer to the fundamental question of the imperfection, incompleteness of human life as a whole. You may live for 100 years till you have to be old. You will be old. you will fall sick. All these are human. All of us will do that. It happens. So there is he was convinced of this fundamental incompleteness of human life. So that made him look for an answer to this question at a higher level. And that made him Buddha. So when you are, otherwise, personal grief coming out of some personal loss, that doesn't have a transformative effect on us as a philosopher. Remember, if you pray, that leads to turn your spiritual life, it can happen. But by itself, it doesn't have a transformative impact on the whole life. That's why Buddha became a philosopher the moment he saw these three visions. That's the beginning of Buddhism, really speaking. Okay?
So it was more compassion
than really.
grief.
Yeah, compassion is a very wonderful word. Perhaps that was what his mind was filled with as he traveled from Lumpini, from his birthplace, from his palace to Bodh Gaya. He's a great human being who was confronted with a great reality, a dark reality of human existence, but he also wanted to find an answer on behalf of humanity. That's the greatness of Buddha. As you mentioned, compassion is a very important element of Buddhism, and also Buddhahood. Buddha himself was an embodiment of that great compassion. Yeah.
Can I ask another question, Swami, or do you want to?
Yeah, please continue. Please, yeah.
The other question is, when you were describing the Buddha's remembrance of his former lives, that seems incompatible with the Hindu idea that he was an incarnation of God, because we read about Sri Rama, he was Rama, he was Krishna. I mean, he never was born as a human.
Yeah. That it has something to do with the classical Hindu attitude. If there are many Hindus, including Vivekananda, who consider Christ also his incarnation, but you are not a baptized Christian. Maybe the bishop, the Catholic hierarchy won't be amused if a non-baptized heathen Hindu or non-Christian dares to consider Christ as an incarnation. In fact, it began with Rajaram Mount Roy, the founder of Brahma Samaj. In 1828, he founded Brahma Samaj. He was invited to London and he stayed for 3 years. He passed away. He came to London, to England. He came as he was invited as a speaker in the Unitarian Church organizations. And then he lived there. He died in Bristol 3 years. And he used to consider Christ as incarnation. Even Keshav Sen used to consider Christ as incarnation, So that is a typical Hindu attitude. There is something very funny about it, but there is something noble about it, something wonderful about it. They don't care, they don't exclude anyone. He's also one of the manifestations of the divine. In that sense, it's called incarnation. Anyone, Buddha also like that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Sheila, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Okay. Hello, yeah. So it strikes me what you said about this noble quality of what he was looking for in dukkha, how he thought of dukkha. And this may be a really incorrect thing I'm citing. I have no textual reference for it. But somewhere along my Buddhist studies, I had heard something which was something like, at one point, the Buddha noted when he was traveling in an ox cart that there was nothing you could ever do about the axle in the cart to stop it from squeaking. It always was a problem, and there was just no way you could put oil on it, you could sand it down, you could do anything, and it was kind of a model for samsara, that there was something very fundamental about this interdependent relative existence, which could never quite be satisfying, could never reach thing. And it was a very simple, daily, everyday, non-spectacular thing, not so much involving compassion, but just a sense of the nature of our relative reality. And I, as well as the compassionate side of it, I always thought there was something actually very fundamental and noble, even in that simple daily thing that he said.
Yeah.
Have you heard that, or it's something like that? It's that same statement of this doesn't work.
You know, I studied Buddhism more as a student of philosophy, and so not in a monastery, but a student of philosophy and student of scriptures, for example, Pali, canons, and all that. So there are quite a few stories you can hear about Buddha, but I don't think I ever heard this. But yeah, but when you read the Tripitakas and when you read these Jataka tales, you can find in each of his previous incarnations, previous life cycles, Buddha displayed something unique, which made him stand apart from all other characters in a story. Or in every story, Brahmadatta, King Brahmadatta was ruling in Varanasi, Benares at that time. He was born. Bodhisattva was born in so many different kinds of births he had. But each of these, there was something about him, and it was slowly ascending, evolving, one after another. Finally, he was born as Siddhartha the prince, and he became a great Buddha. So in each of these, there is this compassion. In each of these incarnations, he demonstrates his compassion. That's one common quality always, compassion and wisdom qualities. So this compassion and wisdom, and so that's what you find in Buddha's flight from Lumbini to Buddhagaya, and then he's undertaking these austerities. Okay, that's what okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jila. Maharaj,
Yeah.
I know this may vary greatly across the different schools of Buddhism.
Yeah.
But as a general matter,
Yeah.
are the Buddhist mantras that are part of the daily practice of Buddhists, are they somewhat analogous to the japa meditation?
These japa practices must have evolved in course of time in different Buddhist traditions, Buddhist teachers. In the Mahayana tradition, Vajrayana tradition, Tibetan Buddhism, and the Hinayana tradition, they have developed different practice of japa in different languages, mostly Sanskrit-based japas in India, and outside India you find either Pali, or in countries like China and Japan, there are also localized forms of practicing different disciplines. They have equivalents in Chinese language, in Japanese language, and elsewhere. That's why Buddhism took deep roots in those countries. I think I have forgotten to mention something important. One reason why many of these so-called Vedantic ideas crept into Buddhism was, men like Nagarjuna, Dignaga, Vasubandhu, Chandrakirti, all these great both Vijnanavadins and Shunyavadins, they were highly educated Sanskrit Pandits to begin with. And they flocked into Buddhism, and they became Buddhist teachers. Nagarjuna and Dignaga, they were all teaching in Nalanda University. So they were eminent Sanskrit Pandits. And they flocked into Buddhist fold, they became monks and teachers. So they must have brought a lot of Vedanta and Vedic ideas into Buddhism. That explains the great difference between the progress of Buddhism or Buddhist thought outside India, especially in China and Japan and other countries, and within India. But eventually you have to remember there were students who came and studied in Nalanda University from China and other countries. And many of the great works, in Sanskrit works belonging to Mahayana tradition, were recovered, and they were retrieved into their original Sanskrit form with the help of translations, which are preserved in Chinese language. And I mentioned Hajime Nakamura's name, the great Japanese scholar, who worked very hard to recreate the original Sanskrit, because during the Islamic invasion of Nalanda University, perhaps tens of thousands of books were burnt and taken away. Fortunately, the great Huyen Tsang, who must have come to Nalanda University maybe 3rd century AD, he took away a large number of Buddhist scriptures, must have got them translated into Chinese and preserved in China. With the help of those books, they were recreated into Sanskrit. So, in a way, Buddhism took deep roots in those countries, and they became localized traditions, influencing folklore, rural life, the culture, everything. So, you can imagine, see, it's a great, interesting story how Buddha influenced human society in such a large scale. Even now it continues to be prosperous and an influential force in the world of religion and culture. Thank you. Even among atheists who can become Buddhist without, be spiritual without believing in a creator God. That's a great uniqueness of Buddhism as a religion. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Maharaj.
So we will continue this class again. Please remember, the next class will be on March 9th, 2025, 6 p.m. And I wish all of you Happy New Year and also Happy Christmas. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.